Hello and welcome to another edition of Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster. I'm the host of the program, and I welcome you to sit back, tune in, and be with me on this exciting program that I have for you today. AARP. I'm sure you've seen the ads, you know about the organization, and if you're my age, you've been in the organization for some period of time, learning about all of its programs, all of the different activities that you can engage in, and to learn about some of its initiatives. But I didn't want to take the responsibility of giving you that information. I've invited a very stellar guest in order to provide you with information on AARP, how you can join it, what are some of the legislative priorities, and in that person I have is the Massachusetts State Director, who I had the privilege of serving on the Massachusetts Executive Council with. That is, my guest today is Mike Festa, who is the Massachusetts State Director. So, Mike, welcome.
Hey, Joe, it's great to be here. Great to be in Stoughton.
Well, it's great to have you, and my time serving on the Executive Council was great, and largely because of the type of leadership that you displayed and have continued to display. And I always found it interesting. I was reading something recently which gave you a background, and I call it the resume that the mothers love. I'm
not a doctor.
Well, it turns out it's okay, but you've been a number of other great things. You've been a prosecutor here in the Commonwealth, I think, in Middlesex County.
Yeah. John Kerry was my first boss.
All right.
So far back I go.
Okay, all right. You served in the state legislature. You were the Secretary of Elder Affairs. And from that, you decided to come in here and head up the state office of AARP. Those are just a few of the things which are on your pathway of success, but I just wanted our viewing audience to get a sense of your background and your knowledge and how intimately you were involved with this particular issue. But we're going to talk about AARP.
Exactly.
I'm going to let you give the acronym so that I won't, I want to give folks exactly what it is, but I know it's been for all its history known as AARP. Talk about that. Also talk about how one can join and why should they?
Sure. Well, first, Joe, let me say thanks again for having me on the show. You've obviously been a real dynamic figure on the AARP Executive Council. You served with distinction for 6 years. You've now termed off because they have that rule that sort of like the Senate, you get to, or a president, you get to a certain point and you can't stay on in that capacity. But you continue to be a super volunteer, and I want to thank you on behalf of not just the staff and the volunteers, but all AARP members. We've got 800,000 in Massachusetts. So AARP is a big, it's a big force in terms of the number of people who are engaged in the organization as members. We got 37 million across the country. So it's a large organization. It's obviously a brand that people have come to know. It's interesting. I have to say that I think it has evolved, and I would tell you that we are actively pursuing in terms of branding, to sort of get into that question of what is AARP all about? Well, to start with, what those 4 letters used to stand for, I'm not going to even repeat because it's so in the past. It really is in the past.
That is very true.
We are an organization that represents people and the interests of people 50 plus, which is about 50 to 100 plus. You're talking a big swath of a population. We have a lot of focused attention in terms of what programs we support, what we offer to members that really runs the spectrum. And we'll talk about a number of those in this conversation today. But I want the listeners, the viewers, to understand that our focus as an organization has always been certainly at the federal, national, Washington level, to fight to protect Social Security and to strengthen Medicare. This is the 85th anniversary of Social Security, the 50th anniversary of Medicare. These are critical programs for a lot of people. And it's not just the ones who are the beneficiaries, it's the families of those beneficiaries. Social Security, for example, as I think many people realize, about 2/3 of the beneficiaries of Social Security are over the age of 62. But leaving a third who are under the age of 62 because of disability,
Yes.
because of a variety of reasons that they may become eligible for Social Security benefits. And so
Well, let's stop
we're
and
trying to
underscore
protect that.
Yeah, let's underscore that, because in the efforts, as you talk about the new direction or the
Focused
direction of AARP on that, and looking at that cohort that's less than age 62,
Right.
let's try and talk to them a little bit in this program, just so that they get a sense that the buy-in, and I know you're going to talk about the caregiver program, and that'll speak to that as well.
Right.
But let's use this time to see if
Well,
we can do some
I'm glad
marketing.
you're making that
Do
challenge.
some marketing
Okay.
for us around that.
We are about real possibilities. That's what you see on the ads. You know, if you think AARP doesn't do X, then you don't know AARP. You know, and X can be whatever. But the fact of the matter is that we have a focused agenda in terms of our advocacy priorities and our community activities. But in terms of attracting members and retaining members, we absolutely are focused as much as anything now on recognizing that the baby boom, that 50-plus population that's aging into the community, they're a critical element of our future, and we want to be relevant to them. As much as we are relevant to those who are receiving Social Security and getting the benefits of Medicare, we recognize that when you look at it, the town of Stoughton is a good example of this. I mean, there's no question that the percentage of volunteers in the communities that we are living in are older than 50,
Yes.
a high percentage. They're a critical part of the economies. There was a recent study done by AARP that actually underscores this point, that in Massachusetts, about 37% of the people are 50 plus. But 49% of the gross national product and the gross national consumption, if you will,
Is that age group?
is that age group. And what does that mean? We're getting those Social Security checks, we're getting that high earning years, and we're putting it into that new TV, the new motor vehicle, the restaurants. We are a big part of the economy, and so as we attract members or try to attract members, we want to remind them, number one, we're an important cohort, and therefore, as we talk about public policy, we are on your side to make sure that your interests are protected. Now, in terms of, most people think of AARP in the commercial side of the business.
I just was going to go there. I don't know. You and I have this synergy. I was going to say, most
Sure.
people know about the insurance
Benefits,
products, the car insurance, and all of those
United
things.
Healthcare.
That's right.
First of all, in my role as state director, I just want to make this clear. I'm not into, and our staff do not promote products and services. That is a separate part of the organization, but it's a critical part. I mean, they are doing a lot of good things in terms of healthcare opportunities for people. We do a lot of major chain negotiations that result in major discounts.
Yes.
I mean, the most common one we talk about in Massachusetts is Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, you get a large cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, you get a free donut if you're an AARP member.
I've used that one.
Yeah, exactly. And Denny's, and there's just all kinds of folks that have corporations.
The travel.
Yes, and travel, obviously the travel center. So to join, to take advantage of those discounts, I mean, I certainly would encourage people to consider that.
And it's cheap.
And
the membership.
yeah, it's $16 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's shop money, and you can be a lifetime member, you can be a 5-year member, which amortizes to an even lesser amount of money. But for that, and I guess I want the takeaway to be, yes, if you're interested in discounts, if you're interested in products, great. We have a lot to offer. And that's a very important part of why I think AARP is a strong organization. But I also would go back to the point about volunteering, about activities in the community. about what matters in our lives. And, you know, for example, we were talking off camera about Life Reimagined.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if anybody, you know, watching this has heard of Life Reimagined. It's still in its early stages of promotion. But we at AARP nationally have gotten behind a very focused program that talks about and addresses what a lot of people are thinking about in their 50s and older in life. They're saying to themselves, you know, what else is there out there for me to do? How do I think about my own interests and needs in a focused way? A lot of times we'll daydream about things, you know, I wish I could be doing X or Y or Z. Life Reimagined is a very disciplined, focused way of giving people the tools to really get to the better place in their lives, to be more fulfilled, to be more engaged in their personal lives, in their professional lives, and in their community. And, you know, again, I want to emphasize that half of our membership actually are working.
Yes.
So we're not about, you know, people who are retired only. We obviously have, you know, again, a focused attention on that. But we are very interested in the quality of people's lives from 50 on, and making sure that people have all the opportunity to take advantage of what life has to offer in the community. We're doing a lot of work in, I talked about volunteerism. Well, let me just give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
We just finished tax season. We're doing this taping in mid-April, right?
Yes.
There are 600 volunteers in Massachusetts alone, in about 240 different sites in Massachusetts, that were giving free tax advice, filling out those tax returns and filing them for anybody's age. But, you know, obviously we focus attention on 50-plus folks. But that's one example of how we're in the community doing some really beneficial things. There's no charge involved. We just, you know, help people do their tax returns, and we file their tax returns.
Is there any limitations on that, or is it just anyone be a member? Or?
Even a very wealthy person like yourself could take advantage of that. Although it might be a complicated return. No, I'm just being fresh for no good reason. But I will tell you that that's an example. We do a driver safety. You know, a lot of people, as they get older, they ask the question, am I driving well? Should I be thinking again about how to safely, sort of focus attention on my driving habits? And we have a driver safety program, which is very popular. We're doing something else. I want to get into this because it's a critical piece of our work as well, and it's on Fraud Watch. We call it Fraud Watch Network. And what it is a recognition, first of all, that, and this is a sad truth, but there are a lot of scams going on that catch people at any age. But certainly we recognize, and it's just bared out by the statistics and the evidence, that that older people are vulnerable to those sophisticated scams that are happening online. The old-fashioned knock on the door, we got a load of tar here, can we do your driveway? And then they take off after they get the money. And, there's just all kinds of scams, but especially internet is a big area where it's more sophisticated and it's more dangerous. And AARP recognized that we really need to be in this space. We need to be actively supporting not just our members, but anybody who feels that they're in a situation where they may be vulnerable. God forbid they've already been taken advantage of. We have ways to direct people to the right authorities and to give them support there. But it's the preventative opportunities that we're very focused on.
And the sad part is
we're doing that in Massachusetts.
The scammers know, they go to the elderly. I had a client call just the other day, scammed. Well, identity theft 3 times.
Oh, wow.
3 times.
Yeah, so that's a big place.
So it's not a question of rich, old, young, or not. The circumstances are having that type of a program for persons who are involved with the mass AARP is important. Name some of the other things that, there's other programs, because you mentioned the driver's ed.
Right.
You talked about the fraud.
And the tax aid.
And the tax aid,
How about HomeFed? Let me tell you about HomeFed.
Let's talk about HomeFed.
People who are getting older, one of the issues is, of course, how do you retrofit your home in a way which is safe? Those banisters that maybe somebody removed when they were younger, that they need to make sure that they've got those supports. there's just some basic things that you can do to make your home safer and more accessible. We do a home fit program, and a number of them around the state. And you know, if I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not sure where close to Stoughton there's coming up to have one. But you can check our website, you know, which is going to be flashed on the program more than once. But I just say it's aarp.org, and then /MA, and now you're into the world of what we're doing on our website. Home Fit is an example of one of those things that we're doing. I'll tell you a totally different approach. Another way we're doing a lot of work is with the Small Business Administration. Very different subject. People in their 50s, we find, a lot of people in their 50s, millions of people in their 50s are entrepreneurs or want to be.
Yes.
They're very much engaged in that, you know, they've worked in a certain place in a certain profession 25, 30 years, and they're looking in their 50s saying, you know, what else is there? I've always wanted to open a pizza shop. I've always wanted to do this kind of a business.
My type of place.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we actually have some guy in New York City that's in our promotions around this entrepreneurial thing that he was an accountant, and he dropped it all because he always wanted to do a pizza place. But my point is that the Small Business Administration, of course, exists at the federal level to support people who are interested, either they're currently in a small business or looking to start a small business. And they're experts. But oftentimes the challenge is for SBA to connect the people to those programs.
Right.
So AARP is on a mission in collaboration with the Small Business Administration to hold these intensive workshops, which we've done now for several years. We're continuing to do, and we will have at least 4 each year, where we get about 100 people in the room. These are our members that we you know, send out invitations to come, and there's you know, there's financial people there, there are business planners there are small business administration experts, and the purpose of that intensive focused attention is to give people the tools that are really interested in trying to become small business people and going from that idea to that reality. So that's an example of how AARP is, we think, effectively addressing what members are looking to do, and in some cases, start a small business is on their agenda. We want to be helpful, and that's something that we are doing.
Well, before you go on, you know,
Sure.
I'm into the promotion business as well. And one of the things I know, the information on how to contact you and your office to learn about these programs and activities. Why don't you give the phone number again, and why don't you give the email, well, the website, so folks have it.
Yeah, that's funny you say on the phone number. Yeah,
well,
you know what it is? I don't have that one memorized, but it's right here.
Okay.
So I'm going to read it.
Okay.
It's 866-448-3621.
Okay.
But it will show up, in fact, as if on cue.
That's
a good producer.
You mean I have some power that when I say things they happen?
Apparently your producer listens to you on
Roy
occasion.
Cohen, I could kiss him.
Well, it's good for you. But he is a great guy, and obviously we appreciate you know, the support you get in the background. But suffice to say, it's not hard to get in touch with us. I mean, aarp.org is the entryway. You know, you type in MA. Or just say Massachusetts, you know, and it'll, on the search engine, it'll get you to the right location for us locally.
Well, let's move. I want to move to an area which is near and dear to my own heart, and this is the efforts that you're doing around the caregiver legislation here in Massachusetts and around the country. And I learned from former Governor Dukakis, you always try to personalize things when you have a conversation on it.
Well, you have a personal story about
Well, exactly. Having had to do that, you know, my mother was in Georgia. Property in New York, the Uniform Caregivers Act, you have to determine whether it's passed in each of the jurisdictions, et cetera. And if we brought this to Massachusetts at the time when we were addressing this particular issue last year, we would have been in a quandary because Massachusetts had yet to pass, and still has not passed.
No, we have.
Well, that's right. I'm sorry. Flashback.
News
that's
flash.
Right, that they passed it, but at the time when I was dealing with it, if I had Massachusetts property, it would have had to probate in both jurisdictions, more costs, more time, more anxiety, and everything else. Talk to folks about that particular effort, because that speaks to your population, that population you're trying to get to, or AARP is trying to get to, that 50 or less, the children of persons who may be senior in trying to address these issues. So let's talk about that particular effort, because you and Jessica were very much involved in carrying that effort forward, along with the other members of the volunteers and advocates and the Executive Council. So can you talk about that?
All right, let me step back in answering that, Joe, and to frame this for the audience. AARP spends a lot of its resources in Massachusetts in what we call the world of advocacy, where public policy issues that affect the 50-plus community are very much on our mind. And we have to obviously narrow our focus each year to priority issues. Last year, you had touched upon an effort that we made in conjunction with a lot of others, within the state. But this was our main legislative priority. It was to recognize that we needed to get adopted in Massachusetts the Uniform Adult Guardianship Law.
Yes.
We were one of only maybe 12 states in the country that hadn't done it. So with a lot of help with people like you, volunteers, we did a lot of lobbying at the State House. We did a lot of communication with our members, who also then called the legislators, and we were successful. That law is now in the books. So basically, yes, if you have a situation where you have a guardianship over a loved one and you're moving to another jurisdiction, or there is multiple states that are involved one way or another, because we have now a uniform law that we've adopted, you can pretty much portably go to each one of these jurisdictions and be recognized for your guardianship authority, which is huge. But let's talk about what's on the agenda this year.
Yes.
I can tell you that AARP nationally, and definitely in Massachusetts, we are focused on how to support caregivers. There are about 1.2 million caregivers in Massachusetts. And by definition, what they're doing is they're taking from their own time, often their own expense, they are supporting another loved one in their homes, most likely, or where they live, to give them the kind of care that people need. And
talk about who is excluded now and who you're trying to get included from the standpoint of getting paid.
Well, okay, there is a law, there is a process actually that is called a PCA, the personal care attendant.
Yes.
You can have a personal care attendant that is paid for through Medicaid if you're eligible.
Yes.
But you cannot be paid if you are the spouse.
That's right.
And that is not the case in most states. I think 27 or 28 states.
Are children excluded as well? I know, no, children aren't, but spouses.
No, you can, but spouse is, and oftentimes the spouse is very much involved. And
yes.
What I can tell you is that is a legislative effort that we are supporting. It is being promoted by a number of advocacy organizations like Mass Home Care, a lot of our advocacy friends in that world. We often join forces to focus attention on an issue. But spouses as paid caregivers is a very simple point when you think about it. That caregiving is happening. But what happens oftentimes is the spouse, who might still be working, has to make a very difficult choice. They've got to scale back their hours of work to spend more time at home to support their spouse, or they're going to, and as a result of that, I should say, they're going to lose income, or they're going to have to stay with working because they have no choice, they need that money, and they're going to have to spend money out of pocket to provide that other care from another person. Now, we think it benefits society, and it's just common sense to acknowledge the relationship, the support and the care that a caregiver that is a spouse is providing, but to allow them to be a designated paid caregiver. And we're not talking a lot of money. We're talking about $300 a week maximum.
Right.
But that can make all the difference between having that spouse provide the care and being driven into a very tough situation, either by losing income, on the work side, or frankly, not being able to provide the care that they personally want to give.
How's that being received on the Hill?
Well, we got it almost to the finish line last year,
yes.
But it wasn't passed. It was stuck in the House Ways and Means Committee, if my memory serves me. But I have to tell you, that's one piece of legislation we're supporting. But the most important piece of legislation we're supporting, which we think is going to really move the needle in support of caregivers, is what we call the CARE Act. It is a model law that was created by and really developed because of a focused attention on what is going on with caregiver roles that's missing in the equation of how do we keep people safe. And what we found is a big piece of the challenge is that when someone is brought, let's say someone has an accident and they're brought to the hospital, it is not required under law that when you intake, the hospital is saying, okay, who's your spouse and, where do you live, and, all the basic information to create a medical record. There's no requirement that they ask, who is your primary caregiver? Because, and when you think about it, if they don't ask that question, now they're not part of the conversation. And when the discharge happens, and when you go back to that home setting, the question is, are we going to be certain that the caregiver is going to be well prepared to know that when the time comes, that they may be required to do wound care, they may be, they may not know how safely to take that person from a wheelchair into the car or to transport them, and mobility issues. So there's a lot of issues that we're concerned with, and what we want and what the CARE Act will do is require that the caregiver be part of that conversation. They're acknowledged, their role is acknowledged voluntarily as part of the intake, but they're also given the opportunity to be educated and to be prepared when the loved one comes back home to give them the kind of supports that they need. We're actively lobbying. We ask anybody who's watching to get in touch with their representative and senator to support this. And I realize that our time is getting short now, but I want to end by saying we are very fortunate to have strong advocates already in the legislature. It's a bipartisan effort, Senate and House. We've got a lot of members who are supporting us already, but we're hoping that we will get that law passed, and we think that's going to strengthen the hand of caregivers to keep people out of hospitals, because a lot of times when they're not well prepared, that's when you have to, something happens at home and they have to go back into the emergency room. And we think hospitals are going to want to support this because it's going to reduce readmissions, which of course is a concern for the hospitals as well.
Well, Mike, I certainly want to thank you, and there's much more we have.
I know.
I'm going to have to have
talked
you
as
back
fast as I could.
Well, I'm going to have you back as a guest, and
Sure.
particularly when you get this legislation passed. But I just want to do a little bit of promotion here,
Of course.
for our friends of Mass General Hospital at Maxie's Delicatessen. They have, and this is what it is, folks. I want you to see the Mugs for Life project. And they're supporting the Sumner M. Redstone Burn Center at Mass General Hospital. You can make a $20 donation. 100% of the funds will go to purchase equipment, services, and education for patients and families. So, folks, let's get out there and support Maxie's Delicatessen as they support the Mugs for Life project at Mass General Hospital.
Nice
Michael,
touch.
thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you do and have done for AARP. It had been a great time serving with you when I was on the Executive Council, and I'm not going to stop volunteering.
No, we look forward to continuing to work together. Joe, thank you, and thanks for your hospitality.
And thank you.
This has been a great show. Community Forum. Is that right? Okay, there we go.
That's right.
There we go.